welcome you officially. I'm Lee Henson Hasty. I'm with the Theological Education Fund at the Presbyterian Foundation, supporting future ministers and operating and sheltering in place in my home office here with my family nearby, and a sunny day here in Louisville. And I'm with my friend, mentor along the way, José Irizarry, who is the Vice President for Education at our sister agency, the Board of Pensions. He is that's in Philadelphia. He lives in Chesterbrook, okay. So close by, and he's also doing the same, sheltering in place and operating from there. And hey, what better venue to talk about education in a virtual society than in this kind of place. So I'll just say, I want to introduce you, but just say hello to folks out there, Jose.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. Saludos a todos y muy buenas tardes.
Beautiful.
I'm glad you're here. Yeah.
I think some people are joining back. Jim Kitchen's out there, and hopefully we'll have others. Good to have you, Jim. So let me just, if you don't know Jose and why he is qualified for all of these things, I had to print out all these things so I make sure I remember. But one cool thing, people don't realize the academy sometimes, how it matters. Jose is a former president, or not currently the president of the Religious Educators Association. Are you former president?
Former.
Yeah, former president. That's his field and sort of higher in religious education. He has so many experiences. We've learned, and y'all get to see just a little preview. I think Elizabeth Caldwell was one of your religious educators when you were at McCormick as an MDiv student, which you came back later, right? Was formative for you before you went to Northwestern for your PhD in society and personality sciences. He also has a degree from McCormick, where he also later went back to serve as a dean of doctoral programs. I met him there in my doctor of ministry program. He kept pushing me. He was great. Luis and Jose, they were the ones. He was dean of another Presbyterian related school, the Evangelical Seminary in Puerto Rico, Seminario Evangelico de Puerto Rico, for 4 years. Director at Cambridge College, which I think did primarily online education, correct? Or
hybrid. It was a
hybrid education. He is, in addition to being the vice president for education at the Board of Pensions, continues teaching part-time, but he was full-time with Villanova in the School of Arts and Sciences. Intercultural pedagogical practices, ethics and of difference, Latino-Latina practical theology, religious aspects, aesthetics of space. But one of his courses, has to do with monsters in the title. What is the title of that course?
It's Religion, Monsters, and Aliens.
Religion. I mean, I want to sign up. Maybe I should. If you're going online, I should sign up for that class. He is from Puerto Rico, where he says he learned to walk, maybe to talk, and to crawl in the pews of the church. He was called into preaching as young as the age of 15 and mentored into ministry in that church and congregation. That church continues to call him even into this role that he is in now in very creative ways. He served also on the Committee on Theological Education in a variety of roles, both institutional and an elected representative. There's only a few people, I think, that've done that. I'm thinking Cynthia Campbell and you, and I don't know if there are any others. That may be it. And he has degrees also from Universidad de Puerto Rico, his BA in philosophy, Boston University, a certificate in professional fundraising, project management, and the School of Engineering at Cornell, and online learning design. That's the most recent in 2019. Just a consummate learner. you're not only an educator, you're a learner, and I think that's a real gift. And just thank you for being here today to talk about this. I know Credo and the educational programs at the Board of Pensions are right at the heart of who you are, but to help us, the church, and those who are watching today, think about, there's some other theological educators I see, James T and Anna Pickney is back, Glenn Bell, Mary Pack, former colleague, hello
Mary.
out there. Tell us first, before we jump into the topic, I'd love to hear, even in these days, you are so attentive to your vocation and discernment. What is it that is helping you come alive? Like Howard Thurman says, it's not what the world needs, but it's what makes you come alive, because that's what the world needs, is people coming alive. What is making you come alive these days?
First of all, Lee, thank you for your generous and kind introduction. It's not the first time I hear you introducing me. And after you finish your narrative, a thought comes to mind, and is, I want to meet that person. Sounds like a nice guy.
You are.
Well, thank you. And, we have been friends for a long time, so I'm happy to have this conversation. Just a caveat, we're going to be talking about education in the virtual society from a pedagogical perspective. So for those who are here, if you have issues with technology, please don't call me after this interview. We're going to talk largely about the challenges of trying to do formation online and at a distance. But I understand there's also interest in how to maximize the use of the technology we have. And that's basically something I'm learning like everybody else. So I'm not an expert, nor claim to be one. So hopefully we can learn together as we go through. Now, your question is interesting because vocation, the call, usually changes around circumstances. And these days, I have been thinking more about my primary call, which is the call that many of us have, to be ministers of our own households. You were quoting Howard Thurman, and what gives you life. And to mind came another quote by Clara Augusta Niebuhr. We were talking about Elizabeth Cowell. She introduced many of us to the sister of the Niebuhrs, and she wrote poetry. She taught at McCormick in the 40s and the 50s, and she wrote this poem entitled "These Little Frictions at Home." So what gives me life,
this little
frictions at home.
Okay.
Yeah. And what gives me life these days are those little frictions at home. I think we are right now.
That's encouraging.
It is. If you think about it, as ministers of households, of relationships inside our homes, we're institutional beings. As modern people, we're institutional beings. And all the institutions we belong to have collapsed in one place we call home.
Right.
Our home is now church. Our home is now workplace. Our home is now school. and
my trainer says it's also the gym.
Yeah, and it's a gym, it's everything. Well, what happens is when those things coalesce in one place, then it takes from the people who understand that space to belong to them.
Right.
So these little frictions at home, for example, debating what to have for dinner when everybody wants something different.
Right.
Or discussing an assignment and having different opinions. Those things are a reminder that families are reclaiming that space and that those moments are precious.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, if I remember well, the poem, it ends saying that outside of those frictions, and that frictions create heat, life can be very cold. And
True.
the poem ends saying something like, how, cold it can be without those frictions at home, and the love that is the source of those frictions. So what
Beautiful.
is bringing me to life is having those moments where we can sit and become a family again and reclaim the space that belongs to a household. So
Beautiful. That really is encouraging. I mean, I'm in conversation with friends and colleagues, many who are in ministry full time, and I think that speaks to them, and it's really helpful, and it's tiring.
oh yeah.
It's very exhausting. You're never really off, but that is encouraging. And I know you do that alongside. By the way, I didn't mention, he is also a spouse, partner, life partner for decades, and three children. Three children who are educating themselves all over the world. One still in Philadelphia, and the others in Italy and Scotland, and I feel like recently. So, but everybody's home right now, right?
Except for my daughter, who is in Puerto Rico, but she's coming home before heading to Scotland. And the only place we have not been able to capture, the only space, is nature inside the house. So I think that's another thing that brings me life.
Right.
And we should practice some more intentional contemplation, walks, just listening to nature around us.
So this makes me think about our topic. Is there a way to translate that kind of holy space, that kind of friction, little frictions, out into a virtual space? I have to say, in our conversation last week, I wasn't really sure we had Eric Wall, who's a musician, and Ted Wardlaw, and he played without even singing the words of hymn that I knew, and it moved me to tears. I mean, I think it can happen here, but how do you create that kind of holy space, that formative space in a virtual environment and society? And
well, the interesting thing is that there's no single answer to that, because there are different understandings of what an environment like this can do. I think we were very intentional when we titled this chat, this conversation, in virtual society. We can use different words. We can use actually the virtual community. Many people use the word community.
Community.
I understand that to be a little bit debatable for some people. I like the word society because the word society refers to the creation of networks of interaction between people who have some kind of similar goal in life. And in this case, probably we don't have a similar goal in life, but we have something that brings us together, and is our dependency on technology. Right. So through technology, we can create those networks. And it's interesting that even in technological language, we use the word network to speak about how things interact with each other. So society, I think, is a safe thing to use. That's what we call about social, social media. We can talk about virtual society because that's what we're asked to do, to engage this way. And it is very proper.
It's nurturing a relationship. I mean, it's nurturing
interactions. It's called, it's more interactions that are informative first, and can be formative, but with more intention. Right. Meaning we cannot assume that by itself, the medium will be formative. It cannot be formative, but it's primarily informative. And when we speak about the social, which actually challenges the way we're using the language social these days, for example, when we speak about social distance. And I know we have been in social media discussing, this doesn't sound good, because a person who distances from the network of society is antisocial or asocial.
Right.
So the question, actually, the commitment we have when we're using these means is the commitment to social proximity, not to social distance. Social proximity
Mm-hmm.
in light of our physical separation or physical distancing.
Mm-hmm.
And social proximity, if I can use the words of the great singer Diana Ross, is,
Please.
how do we
Sing
reach
it.
out?
Why don't you sing it for us? I mean, you're a singer too.
Reach out and touch. So yeah, so it's about how can we, yes, how can we reach out and touch now that we cannot reach out with an embrace, with a handshake?
Mm-hmm.
How we use technology for that reaching out. And technology is just one artifact for reaching out. There are many other ways we can do. And I don't know if it had happened to you, but my experience in these last 2 months have been how people have started using again snail mail. I have received more cards than before. That's an artifact. Yes, you will show me.
I have postcards right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I collect postcards. And I'm like, someday I will send these postcards, and I've been sending them. Like, here's one of some folks will recognize. You can see.
What's that?
That's Montreat. That's
oh yes,
Assembly Inn, which I'm not going to get to see this summer.
Yeah.
And here's one where our family went to Rock City.
Nice. So you should start sending those.
Yeah, and this is my Presbyterian is Coastal Carolina. Yeah, I have, it really is true. And that's, so it's not like we have some new artifacts, some new tools to use. It's not like we haven't done this before. I mean, because.
And we have new and old, and simple too. It's the phone call that you can make. It's the card you can send. It is the plate of cookies you can drop at your neighbor's home, which actually my neighbors have never bring to my home anything except for the last two weeks, which is they're bringing bags of tea in rainy days. So these are ways of connecting and getting closer as a society. So I think we can agree on that. Where things become a little bit debatable, even in the literature on the education in the virtual community, is the virtual space is when we speak about community.
Right.
Because of the different understandings we have about community and education. I remember, although online education has been present in the current form since the 80s, I think the first online course was delivered on 1984 in the University of Toronto.
Wow.
Theological education, we started a little bit later. And we started later in the 90s, mid-90s, late 90s, because of the shifts on enrollment, second career people, changing models of residence or not. And one of the first resistance, and I was part of the resistance, let me tell you. I was part of that resistance with other faculty members was, yes, this is a way in which we can capture a larger audience of students. We can reach out to students we couldn't before, but how can we define that as a real community without the presence of the person, without this incarnational? So we turned the conversation into a theological conversation. How can we be a community in the Christian sense without the incarnational component? Right.
That's a question I think church leaders right at the top of their, when they're talking about gathering virtually, gathering, face to face. This is the question. I was just with a friend of my daughter's, and he was just like, I miss church. I miss being there. I miss being there, even though he says I'm there, in a worship space. So I think that's what I've heard you say is there has to be some intentionality around how you gather that. So it's not just, you can't just necessarily put out a one-way, video, for example, and say it's done, church is done, right? That's not even what we say when we are gathering face to face. And it's just not that worship hour, right? That we're
it's not. But we need to realize also that we were pushing to this reality without much time to plan and think about it in a more
there's grace here.
Way. There's grace because it's when you think about a virtual space, you look at it as an architect will look into building a house.
Right.
The architect will not build a house and say, this is the house, now place the house wherever you want. The architect will look at the environment and see what fits this environment and start developing on that sense.
Yeah,
And we didn't have,
because big church, big city, or small church, big city. I mean, there, you know, Puerto Rico versus Iowa. I mean, it's going to be different. I mean, right. So it's not like you can just cookie cutter.
Exactly.
This.
But when you're pushing to a reality like this, the tendency is to try to find the models. If you want to do this fast, like for example, this happened a Saturday, and slowly on Sunday we have to have our online service. So it is okay that we're exploring and experimenting, but we have to be looking forward. This is not only transitional. I think this reality will stay with us for a long time. And then we have to accept the fact that even when theologically we can speak incarnationally, even when educationally we use metaphors that are bioorganic, like for example, growth, nurture, all those things, we will continue to use means like this to help people form each other and to create a different kind of social interaction mode. And we need to start getting ready for that rather than just saying, this is going to be transitional, let's pass through it and let's go on. And so I will say, just to say, after the 90s and that discussion, I still consider that we can still do a community online, but that community is defined differently, meaning there are communities and there are communities. That's fine. We you know, there's a community, for example, the online community, because it's hypertextual, it's about symbols and words, and there are words behind words. You can get more information in a space like that you can get in a face-to-face interaction.
And it's catalog, you have notes.
Yes, and not only that, you are constrained in the face-to-face by the space and time, not in the online community. The online community
you can be
allows you
asynchronous,
asynchronous. It allows you to go into different places to look for information, so you're more informed. So that, in that sense, that's a different kind of community and forms knowledge in a different way, which is very rich. But on the other side, you have this other community that is important too. That is the flesh community that adds some of the senses that you cannot have through the online experience. The sense of smell, for example, which is so important for, honestly, for the community. I'm reading a couple of books by Ivan Illich, who is a priest in the 70s. I recommend for those of you who have not read him, Critical of Institutions, Radical at his time. But he was actually having very good conversations about this transition of our.
Let's get the name. How do you spell it?
Ivan is I-V as in Victor, A-N. Illich is I-L-L-I-C-H.
Okay.
He taught at
it's Tillich without the T.
Without the T. And he was he actually was provost at the university, Catholic University in Puerto Rico for a long time. And but he is from Vienna, and he taught also at and I discovered that David Ramage invited him to teach a course. He was already very famous around the world, a special course on 1991, something like that. It was my last year in seminary, and I missed it.
Oh no!
And he died afterwards. So it was kind of interesting. And I still have the letters he exchanged with David Ramage, because I'm doing some research on the course he wanted to develop. And the course was really about looking forward to technology becoming an institution and how we manage that. And what he says is that there are communities where the smell of the community, think about a church that uses incense, for example, or even the people who sit around you, they have the same kind of, so it's a different way of interacting. It's not less a community, it's not more a community, but it's a distinctive community. And the intentionality that goes into constructing both communities is different.
You know, you're making me, I don't know if I'm doing a little translation in my mind back to the very beginning of our conversation about being ministers and cultivators of community in your own
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm.
The worship community that we're a part of has weekly communion.
Mm-hmm.
And it's sort of known, one of the, you know, often the bread is baked and there's various breads, but sort of early on, the bread that was shared was this, it's a brand called the King's Hawaiian Loaf. It's a very sweet bread. Do you know
Yes,
it?
with pineapple. Yeah, they make
Right,
it with pineapple
exactly.
juice. Yeah.
Right. And
Mary,
it's just,
Mary, she'll know.
yeah, Mary will know. By the way, Carmen is with us. Stephen Smith, Carmen Rosario, Greg Bolt, Perry Chang. I
Nice.
saw others, Juan Sarmiento, Chris White, Jessica Tate. Glad to have you all.
Great.
Ville Marie, our co-moderator.
Hey,
We
Bill
should
Marie.
stand up and sit down. It made me think of that bread because our kids, they kind of misheard it and we didn't correct them. They called it not communion bread, but the community's bread.
Oh,
And
wow.
we would make sure, you can buy it also in smaller rolls.
Mm-hmm.
We would make sure to have it at home. And I
Mm-hmm.
have to say, having that bread at home, you know, seems silly. But it was, and I'm thinking we haven't done that during this. We haven't bought any in this shelter in place, but I'm going to go get some if I can find some, because it does remind me of kind of the taste and the flavor and
Yes.
some Welch's grape juice, you know, of being together in community. So is that the kind of thing you're talking about? Is trying to find ways to bridge those gaps.
That's correct. And also a reminder that perhaps we are becoming more aware now of the particularities of each community.
Right.
So things that you never thought before, like for example, wow, having communion with this bread is significant. It ties me to the community.
Right.
We didn't think about that because it was so normalized in our rituals.
Maybe I'll deliver it. I'll deliver it to some people's houses. Now you got me thinking. Our time is going fast, and there's so many gifts that Jose also. We could talk about this more. Hopefully, y'all get to know him. Ask some questions. He is on Facebook too, and tag there. He's an artist. He's a musician. He's a preacher, but he also is a collector of children's books. And I sent him a little message a couple of hours ago, and I said, you know, maybe you have some recommendations. Some of the best recommendations ever on children's books I have received from you. And you said, you know, Lee, I know you. I already was thinking I would have that. So he knows me. So do you have any children's books as we get toward our close to recommend?
Well, okay. Man, I wish we had more time.
I know.
Many things to talk about.
We can do it again.
Yeah, because I think that there are many things, since we have already posted a challenge about how to build a community, having a conversation about how we actually concretely can think about building that community online. Right. Will be a good point to continue a conversation.
Well, maybe Jose, let's do something together that you know, I'll help get people there and you help us. I mean, we could have a larger conversation about that. I'm 100% in.
Great. Well, as Lee said, I knew he was going to ask me about the children books because and probably these are not new, and I'm glad Bill Marie's around, because she is reading children books these days.
That's true. That is true.
Having reading. So I don't know if these are going to work, but these are the ones that I'm reading and using lately. This one, which I recommended to you before, is I Need a Monster. Speaking about, this is the first book I used for my class, Monsters, to start just like with some levity in the
Monsters, aliens, and
religion, aliens, and monsters.
Religion. Okay. Yeah.
But this book, if you cannot get it right now, there's in YouTube. There's a reading of this book by Rita Moreno, Oscar-winning actress. A wonderful reading of the book, and I like the book because it's a book not only about the normalization of our fears, especially in children, but also for adults. Because for me, there are two levels to any children's story. The one that is grasped by children and the one by adults. For adults is, why do we have a need to construct monsters? What is the psychological need? And the book actually says that we feel comfortable with our monsters. We need
Right.
monsters to feel
Right.
safe in some ways. And we have to create that other that is different so that we can feel
We,
safe
it's
in our
funny.
space.
Elizabeth and I were talking about this for some reason, maybe because I was
Mm-hmm.
talking about you this week, and we were saying how brilliant it was. The creators of Sesame Street had all of those monsters who were our
Monsters, yeah.
friends. I mean,
Yeah,
Grover, is
yeah,
our
yeah,
friend. Even Oscar the Grouch,
yeah.
they're all
They're
our
our
friends.
friends, and they're needed.
Yeah.
This one, it's more of this is separate is never equal. It's
Uh-huh.
more a memoir kind of book for children. It's a story of Sylvia Mendes, who she's an American citizen, a little girl who went to a new school in California, Westminster, California, and she was told because she was of a Mexican descent that she needed to go to a Mexican school, even when she couldn't speak Spanish that well. And this was 7 years before the landmark Brown versus Board of
Wow.
Education.
Wow.
So that they have a lawsuit, and it's a good story. And the last one, when God gave
Oh,
us
wow.
words.
Haven't seen that.
And this one, I'm not going to tell you much about it, except for the fact that when God created the human being, God decided to give them words, and the angels opposed that proposal.
That's
Because,
awesome.
yes, so I'm not going to tell you how it ends, but they didn't like the idea because they were a little bit concerned about what humans will do with words. And
True.
honestly, the angels may be right.
That's true. Well, I will say I love the phone, but having a visual, and there's so much in the the communication nonverbals. It's so good to see your face truly
Thank
and
you.
hear your voice, for you to share some of your story and wisdom, your joy. And I wonder, as we sign off, Jose, if you would be willing to give a charge, a blessing, a benediction to our friends who are out there. And thanks again for just a wonderful afternoon for me.
Thank you. So before I do that, for all of those who join in, thank you. Muchas gracias. Those of you who I know and don't know, you can Facebook friend me and ask me any question or send me an email if you want to continue the conversation. So
Yes,
really
great.
enjoy this. Well, we're living in difficult, challenging times. So my blessing for you today is that when the pathways of hope close, may you find a way. When the voices around you sound ambivalent and uncertain, may you be captured by truth. And when all dreams seem to wither in the winter of our souls, may you be awakened by life. The one I am, who is the way, the truth, and the life, be with you as you face the world anew. Thank you.
Amen. Okay, I had my moment there too. Almost got me.
Oh,
Thank
come on.
you. That was beautiful. I needed to hear
Blessings.
that. I suspect others did too. Next week, we'll have, I think you may know David King. Do you know David King?
Yeah.
The Lake School Philanthropy Family School is going to be with us to talk about congregational finances, which is very important in this time. Hope you'll join us then. He's just been part of a huge research project around this area, and you're giving me a nod that you want to hear David King, right?
Yes, I will. I will be there.
He's excellent. He's really excellent. Be safe and enjoy your family. I hope your daughter arrives safely back soon, and don't be a stranger. Stay in touch.